Thanks for joining us. This is the January show, 2020, New Year underway, and the New Year's off to a great start. We've had ribbon cuttings every week, new initiatives rolling out. It's really been an exciting start to the year, and one of the most exciting elements of it is a couple weeks ago, or was it just last week, we had the ribbon cutting for a city facility, a new permit center at the Department of Permitting and Inspections down on Pine Street. I think what most people think of as the Department of Public Works building. There is a whole new presence down there that we cut the ribbon on last week, and here's what it's about. And I'm joined here by Bill Ward, who is a longtime city employee in several different capacities. And we'll talk a little bit about Bill in a sec. Bill, for this show, the most significant thing is he is the new director for the Department of Permitting and Inspections. What this permit center and this new department are about is that for many years, the city has been trying to improve its permitting system. And what I mean by the permitting system is really its sort of land use, building, development permitting system. So the office that and offices in the past that people go to get permission from the city to make physical changes, investments in their homes or businesses. It's long been an area of real concern, and really I've often said I think I've gotten more complaints about the permitting system than probably any other aspect of city government, any other service that we provide. And so for years we've been working on an improvement to it, and last week we really made this significant, I think, leap forward in this effort by opening this permit center. So now there is just one office in the city that you go to down on Pine Street if you are seeking a permit, instead of that used to be there are 3 different offices. That one office is a reflection of the fact that we have consolidated what used to be 3 different departments into one Department of Permitting and Inspections. And there's also the other big advancement here is that there is one single point of accountability. All of the 20 different people working in this department and a number of different functions, all the accountability flows up to the department head, the director of the Department of Permitting and Inspections, and the first director in the history of this new department is Bill Ward. And Bill, I thought that was a pretty exciting day. What were your thoughts last week?
Yeah, it was exciting. It almost seems like it's been so long, such a long climb to get to this part of the mountain. But we have a little bit more to go. It was an exciting day. I was glad to have most of our staff there. Some were actually out working on the day and during the ribbon cutting. But it's a busy place for the city. Most residents, if they've done permitting in Burlington, have been through there, sometimes several times. I think they're going to see a change in the way things are being done. Staff is working at a level together that I've never seen before, and just having them in the building is creating some natural conversations that frankly should have happened before, but we've set them up for a much greater level of success, and I think customers will be the main beneficiary.
So we got time to talk about a number of different aspects of that. We welcome phone calls at 862-3966. Before we get into some more of the details of this new system and department, Bill, why don't you just share a little bit about your history with the city of Burlington? It's really been, you started out in the Burlington Police Department, right? And how long were you an officer with us?
So I started out in June of 1987.
Wow.
And I was a young officer working for Chief Kevin P. Scully, and we were at 82 South Winooski at the time. So I'm used to building changes. I was there when the department moved over to 1 North Avenue, and it's been a great time of growth for the city, and I'm really grateful for the opportunities the city has given me. I've tried to give back at least as much. I've been given a lot of great opportunities to both go to different trainings, to see different things. I even got an opportunity to go to Russia for 3 weeks at one point when Tom Tremblay and he was the deputy chief. Wow. We went with a team from Project Harmony.
Oh, wow.
So some amazing things. That's just one of many things, but I was a DARE officer for a number of years in the schools. I still run into folks almost on a daily basis. They seem much older now, but they say, I remember you. You were my DARE officer. It's a fun feeling, but I know quite a few people from Burlington from all of those years, but it was just a few months shy of 23 years when I left, and it was...
And did you go straight into the code enforcement?
Straight into this. I was nearing the end of my career. I wasn't sure I could do the police career too much longer. It's a tough job. Being a police officer anywhere is challenging, but there's so many different aspects of it, and it definitely wears on your soul to see the human suffering that goes along with that job. So I think it's good to have new faces in there, and good leaders are a critical part. That's why I learned so much through the chiefs I worked with through the years. And it set me up for a great opportunity because they both provided learning opportunities, going away to places like Roger Williams University for some leadership training. So I felt like I was ready when the city had 2 other chances where they looked for someone to run the code enforcement department. And I went to see the director of human resources when they were opening up one more time because they couldn't find the right person. They said they needed someone with some leadership experience, but also someone who had enforcement in their background, because that was one of the things that they had different leaders, but not anyone with a strong enforcement background. And I said, I am going to jump in, and they suggested you'd be perfect. And I went through a pretty rigorous panel in 2010 or at the end of 2009, and in exactly 10 years ago this month is when I took the job.
Wow!
So sort of anniversary of sorts. Interesting.
So I got elected in 2012, and obviously we've been working together. So Bill's former position was being the head of code enforcement, and that is a position that used to report directly to the mayor, and so we started working together. And one thing a couple things I appreciated about Bill were one, just how quickly, something that I talked about a little bit as a candidate for office was this idea of a see-click fix technology. And in that first summer, my memory of it is at least the first summer in office, you went out and saw the potential of that technology for addressing code enforcement issues as well as other municipal issues, and really made it happen. And it's grown into a really significant part of how we try to manage the issues that are reported by the public. We were up to how many reports do we get a year now through that system, Bill?
There are thousands of reports each year. I just looked at it today just to see where we're at for the number of issues we've resolved, and it's over 17,000 issues we've resolved for citizens since we started using it. So it is a great tool, and I have to give credit to my counterparts in the Department of Public Works. They had a separate system for quite some time, and they were really strongly invested in that. And I think with Chapin Spencer's leadership and Rob Goulding, who worked on the policies to help them get further into it, they've expanded their use too. So I think the public will find the tool you talked about as a candidate is really a great tool. I like it because it's transparent. The public can see the good and the bad in the work that we do. And that's not something that we in government often like to show people the bad. It's part of what happens. We are not as quick on some issues as we could be, and it's okay for the public to tell us you didn't do a good enough job. We expect that if we don't, but I also want to make sure that my staff gets credit because they do a lot of really great things within a really short timeline. So you always have to take the good and bad with all things, but in that case, we're always looking for ways that we can do better. Appreciative for your leadership, Mr. Mayor, for things like BTV Stat, which has helped us look at data in a much different way now and try to drive our performance based on specific metrics, always looking to improve. Right. And usually it is the primary beneficiary is the public, because we are trying to give a better service, more efficient government to save money for the public. But it's also rewarding because most of the people I work with have been there. All of the inspectors up until just recently, we hired a new person. they have all been there since, I think the last person we hired was the election day, the day that you were elected in 2012. So
Really? Wow.
a lot of longevity in the
How about that?
inspector deep bench. So that says a lot about the people that work there. They're committed to helping residents and making Burlington better.
Well, the other thing that really caught my attention from the work in the early years with you, Bill, was that you really had a sense of the importance of setting up the systems correctly, of trying to understand where in the flow of the processes that project might go through, that a particular home might go through in receiving its inspection, where there, what were the factors that were lengthening the period of time that an inspection would be open? What were the factors that were contributing to our succeeding or not succeeding at getting done all the inspections that we needed to by statute over the course of the year? And really, it's been quite a success story within code enforcement that we've gone from a situation of really not. Really, as I understood it, Bill, right? And correct me if I got this wrong, but we had never really inspected every unit in the city once every 3 years, which is what the ordinance said prior, really, to 2012. You were able to get rid of that backlog, make some changes in the ordinance itself that made a little bit more sense, and really consistently for years now, we have been meeting the kind of statutory goals and ensuring that the city makes good in this idea on a regular basis, inspecting every rental home in the city, and it feels like that we've come a long way there.
Definitely, and I definitely want to credit my law enforcement career for setting that sort of concept to mind, that I definitely believe that most people are good. They are going to follow the rules, but government's responsibility is to make that clear for them. And if people understand what the expectations are, what the rules are, and what the consequences are for not following it, you will not have to spend that much time with those folks, because again, people are going to do that. And landlords are no different than the general public. They are great people, and we're fortunate because we've got a really good group of landlords who take excellent care of their property. Most of Burlington's properties are what we consider above average. Unfortunately, it's the ones that are below average that you hear about. So the system that you were talking about, Mr. Mayor, is, in my mind, is exactly the right one. You have a 1 through 5 year system that we started in 2015. I have to credit, Councilor Karen Paul, because she pressed us for the system like the Department of Health inspection system for restaurants. Some rating system. This was a good way to give the properties who had no violations, they were given a credit or a rating certificate of compliance that was good for 5 years.
Yeah.
That means we won't be back if we didn't see anything on the first time, unless a tenant complains. If there's a new issue, we'll go back. But for the properties on the opposite end of the spectrum, a property that has many deficiencies, once those deficiencies are corrected, we'll be back in a year's time to make sure that it's not falling out of compliance quicker. That seems to make sense for me from a government perspective, because the other folks have earned a little bit more time before we need to go back, and the ones that have they've demonstrated they haven't done a good job, and so we needed to check them more frequently. We are doing that, and we'll continue to do that. I'm very pleased with the system. The one upgrade we're discussing in-house is, since we have, for example, the 1 through 5 year system, and the cutoff point between whether you get a 4 or a 5 is that 5, the number of 5 deficiencies. We think it might be time to lower that down. That's the raising of the bar, so to speak, because we do expect, as we go around this next time, rental units will be having fewer deficiencies. So we're going to raise that standard with your approval and council's approval in the coming months, to try to make sure that people are always aspiring, like we do, to always do a little bit better job each time you go through a cycle.
Wow, I hadn't heard that proposal quite yet, but that's exciting. I think an example of how, as you've gotten that system working better, you've been able to go beyond just doing the kind of minimum number of inspections that were required to making sure that the quality of the inspections improves, to being able to reallocate resources to other responsibilities and interests. So it's been quite exciting to watch. Let's go back now. Let's move to the current challenge, though. And again, we welcome phone calls at 862-3966. Your job suddenly now, Bill, since July 1, has been expanded considerably. Now it's not just this one area of permitting and enforcement, the code enforcement area. There is now everything upstream of that too, which is under your leadership. Really, I think of it as the three big areas: our code enforcement, which we've been talking about, the zoning process, where people secure zoning permits, and then the related, but historically at least separate process where people secure building permits. Those three functions used to be physically spread out. Zoning was in City Hall. The building inspection, building permit offices were down as part of DPW on Pine Street. Code enforcement was also in that same building, but a different part of the building. Now everything's been kind of pushed into one department. How are you thinking about the challenge from here in terms of what are your, now that we have this permit center open, what are your, I know it's not quite right to say first steps, but what have you done since we've had this new department, and where do you see that work going in the months ahead?
One of the things we've tried to do is get the system set up so that the people are working in an environment that encourages the communication. So having some better meeting spaces, that's part of what we did with the renovation of the building, having better greeting areas for the public. Essentially, I think it's important to say that the public was pretty happy with each of those three elements, the zoning, trades, and the code enforcement, individually. However, when it came to working between all three of those, that's where things sort of broke down, because you could have one department approving one type of issue and another department saying, no, you need to do it this way. But the customer was the one that was having to sort of find their way between those two regulations. What we've done by combining them, it gives us an opportunity to jointly review this and have the customer having a singular focus rather than a dual or tri-focused, where you have three different departments maybe sending you back and forth between different places. We can sit down or bring the correct people into the room as a customer is doing, for example, a window permit on the zoning side of things, and making sure that Brad Biggie or Kim Ionelli, our two building officials, can review the project to make sure that what will be approved by zoning will also be approved by the trades team, so that the permit effectively will have the same requirements through both of those divisions. And again, it was hard enough to do it when it was a separate building. Having it separate divisions, but still within the same department, they do have to report to me. I think they know what my expectation is. My expectation is to go from having this be really a service delivery to really a product delivery, having the mindset from all of our team change to, we're delivering a product to the residents, which is a closed permit. And in order to do the closed permit, that means that all those other elements need to work together. And again, looking at it like producing a product for them is a much better way. We had the Vermont manufacturing team come in to provide some training, some lean training, and I think that did help everybody get that idea of trying to eliminate the unnecessary steps, both for the customer and for each other.
Yeah.
So I like to use that analogy like they use for manufacturing. If people were considering it instead of a service like a product coming down the assembly line, someone who might be working at the front of the assembly line, who also knows what the product is going to look like at the end, will probably can have it better prepared for the next phase, so that they know it's going to help the people down the line in the system. So again, I said it at the ribbon cutting, and I think I'll continue saying it. Our customer service team is probably going to be the most integral part of making this work, because they're going to be the day-to-day messengers on getting the issues that there are going to be problems, but getting those problems fixed will be the type of thing of having them helping someone through a process.
You know, some of the innovations you've considered, at least, and I'm not in the weeds on all of them, but they just seem like really common sense improvements that we were leaving on the table before because of the fractured nature of the system. And I agree with your point that I think most people, which one of the challenges about the past system is that we had hardworking, committed employees throughout the system that I think you're right, the public responded to positively, and I think that they were doing their best and doing a good job in many ways. The challenge was the system and the way in which the work interacted and the handoffs and kind of transition areas between different teams. And it does seem this new structure, I'm really optimistic that it's going to help us really reduce, if not eliminate some of those problems. One of the things that you've done, I hope, I know it was on the table at least at one point, I haven't talked about it recently with you, but is there were periods in the old system where there would be like a warning period where a notice would be posted and there was just a certain amount of time had to elapse before the permit could proceed. In the old days, everything would stop during that notice period. Have you been able to find ways to keep work moving even while there is a wait like that?
So the practical piece of that is starting with the Windows permits, because as you know from citizen complaints, it's probably one of the most common and one of the most costly. If someone puts in the wrong Windows, we know if their permits are two different requirements, having them have to change them after they put them in is definitely not the right time to do it. So that's the first major project where I've asked the zoning team and the building officials to have concurrent approvals and talk to each other. So the first step in the door is the zoning approval, because if you can't do the work according to the zoning ordinance, it makes no difference if you can comply with the building code for that. But once people have the zoning approval, often they've had forgotten about the building permit piece. Now we're not going to let folks out the door unless we're reminding them, but also encouraging them to meet with the building official. And in this case, with Windows, we'll have that concurrent approval so that Brad and Kim would be able to get a chance to look at those specifications and either give it the thumbs up or thumbs down before we have the trades or before we have the zoning team say that 15-day period is up and now you can come in and get the released zoning permit. So we're finding it first with the most useful project, an opportunity to sort of cut our teeth. I really didn't want to expand it system-wide until we had worked out what we think were the bugs with some of the bigger problems. Probably one of the, I'd say, least innovative but most important pieces really is looking at, similar to the product I was talking about at the assembly line. At the end of the assembly line, we've got our customer service team who's looking at the problems. You can call it the safety inspection or the quality management. They know when a customer's coming in to close it, the mistakes they've made by not filling out the residential building efficiency form, or not having completed some other piece of paperwork, or not completed one of the conditions in their project.
Right.
By tracking those errors that have been made in the past, it gives us all a better idea of what to look for. So on the project intake side,
right,
our customer service and the planners can remind people about those things to reduce those error rates up front and eliminate them at the end. So you and I haven't talked about this, but I was encouraged to see that was one of the biggest deficiencies that we had in July when we did some initial numbers. The residential building efficiency form is essentially a form that the customer is required to fill out and file in the land records, and it was a really common error. It's early, but in December, Matt Perry, who's doing our zoning inspections, he reported to me that there weren't any violations of that.
Wow.
All of the projects that came in had already complied with that.
Wow.
At the end of their project, which is really encouraging to me. It's way too early to declare victory, but those types of things, I didn't expect we'd go from a big number, close to 50% to being down to zero.
Oh my gosh.
And it's a smaller number in December. We have a smaller number of projects being closed out than we do, say, in the spring and summer. But still, anything that dramatic is noteworthy, and it doesn't happen by accident.
Wow.
I think it means our customer service team and folks are talking with members of the public, and they are following those, following those instructions. That's really encouraging. And rewarding the staff is just as important as rewarding the customers. The reward for the customers will be they'll have greater satisfaction and less frustration with our team at the front desk.
Wow, that is very hopeful. One of the things that I like about this effort is, and gives me some confidence that it's going to succeed, is you just kind of gave us an example of it, that you're a manager who focuses on the numbers, who is looking to understand what the outcomes here, what's the product that, as you suggest, that the department's work is delivering. And as we say that word, I always am conscious, like we use this language sometimes of customer service now, and the goal being a product. At the same time, I know you're very conscious of the fact that we remain regulators in this, and that there is an important, the system entrusts in you and your team important public safety, public health responsibilities, and so I know you don't lose sight of that.
Right.
At the same time, you've set goals for how the system will function better, and these are empirical goals. They're based on measurements and outcomes. You want to say a little bit more about some of the other successes you're hoping to have in the first year of this new system?
I will just say that, from the intake to the closure and overall reduction in the number of problems that we have, I think we're going to have greater success. The other piece I need to say is it's not just data for me. For me, I've always been about the people, and I think our people are our greatest asset and our greatest resource as the staff members. Remember when you and I sat at Muddy Waters when you were a candidate for mayor, you asked me about what I wanted to do. I said, I want to unleash the creativity and let the team have the fun that they need. We have great city staff. We need to unleash their creativity, give them the goal, and let them find the best solutions moving forward. And I think we're going to be continuing to do that. And I think the public's going to almost certainly see regular, if not very noteworthy results in a relatively short time. Awesome.
So what do you got here, Bill? It looks like you got a prop out there, and this is, you got the new logo.
Yeah, I got the new logo. Folks have probably come to know me. I wear my hat almost all the time, but tonight I brought it and put the white hat out. It doesn't say code enforcement anymore. It says permitting and inspections. I have one for you at the office, so I'll be happy to share one with you.
I'm a big baseball hat guy too, so it's exciting to see a new, to see the title on the building, on the hats now. It was no small. I come to think of this as probably the most significant structural change in city government in the better part of 20 years. I think maybe since there was a consolidation at DPW years ago, where the water services was rolled in. It's probably the biggest change in the form of government since then. And another thing that I like about it, and again, it makes me hopeful about success, is not only do we used to have 3 departments, not only did they used to be in different locations, but different people within the system actually reported to different authorities. Much of the system reported up to the mayor and the city council, but the most important, not the most important, but a key element of the system, the zoning element, reported to the planning commission, and there was that lack of a single oversight always concerned me. We've addressed that. We've got this new system up and running. And we think, last thing, and we're running out of time here, my sense is the people who are going to benefit most from this are do you agree with this? It's sort of the occasional users of the system, not the people, the pros who are in there every day. They kind of figured it out,
exactly.
Even though as complicated as it was.
Exactly.
But it's the people that come in once a decade to do something on their home. We hope it's now going to be a much better experience going forward.
Yeah, our team will be much better at every step along the way as a function of working in the same building with one another.
All right, I think we're out of time. Bill, thank you for being on the show. Thank you for your service. Good luck with this major new undertaking. I want to thank all of the viewers for tuning in. We will be back, I think, after town meeting day for the next edition of this show. Look forward to seeing you again, and thank you to Channel 17 for making it possible to have these live at 525 shows. Have a good night, everybody.